Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Lynn Shad. Lynn has been a longtime member of our congregation, a certified financial planner and senior vice president at Morgan Stanley. Lynn has extensive experience in the complex world of personal and institutional finance. But many of us know her better as a woman of generous spirit and huge heart for UUCJ, plus countless organizations that support children, women, and underserved populations of Jacksonville, some of which include Brooks Health System, Daniel, UNF, UF, Larch, and of course, UUCJ. Please welcome UUCJ member and my friend, Lynn Shad.
Good morning. Excuse me. Today, I'd like to share with you a few of the reasons that the UUCJ Foundation is so important to me, and I believe the future of this church. This is from UUCJ's website. By serving compassionately and connecting authentically, we change the world. Every time I see that on the website, it just touches me. The foundation's efforts help change the world today, but also help change the world in the future. And that's what we're going to talk more about. The purpose of the foundation, through the bylaws, is to ensure the support, enhancement, and continuation of the religious and charitable activities of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, that sounds nice, but what does that mean? What does the foundation do? Well, there are a number of functions. One is education. Many of you have attended our workshops on estate planning, medical care, gifting, IRA, how to handle your IRA beneficiaries. We've also helped members with set up donor advised funds. These are funds for specific purposes. For example, the Fleming Nature Walk. We also help members and friends with plan giving, helping them decide the best way to do their end of life gifts. And then there is the endowment. This is the activity of the foundation that I think has the greatest benefit to UUCJ. I want to explain what the endowment is and how it is different from your annual gift. Your annual mission funding pledge funds the activities of UUCJ on a yearly basis. Most of that money will be spent by year end. An endowment is designed to be a lasting gift. The principal amount remains intact, while the investment income is used for charitable purposes. Why do people give to endowments? Well, the Catholic diocese says they give to endowments to create a sense of immortality, because an endowment gift will be invested permanently. It can serve as a permanent tribute to the donor and extend the donor's values into the future. It makes significant investment in the future. And an endowment gift endows annual gifts. An endowment gift allows donors to perpetuate the annual gifts. For example, a $2,500 endowment gift could pay $100 a month in perpetuity to an organization. This is the benefit of endowments that excites me the most, I personally like. I look at it as the gift that just keeps giving. A way to make your annual pledge forever, long after you are gone. For donors, an endowment is more than a donation. It's a legacy that perpetuates the donor's values and things that they are passionate about. It's a gift that grows and lasts long into the future. In the 35 years since the start of the UUCJ endowment, over $800,000 has been distributed to the church. Each year, our endowment pays 4% of the December 31st value to the church. The current endowment total is $773,136. My personal goal is I hope before I'm gone, I can get that up to $1 million. This year, the endowment distribution to UUCJ is approximately $29,000. $29,000. That's 10% of UUCJ's 2021 mission funding budget, paid for by friends of the endowment, many that are long past. And these distributions will continue year after year after year. And the distributions will grow as they have in the past. I think one of the ways I can best help you understand the endowment is to give you an example of one of our donors. Most of you did not know Bill Bennett, but he cared about you and wanted to support your efforts at UUCJ to change the world. Bill was a longtime Unitarian who moved to the Penny Farms retirement community and joined our church in the early 1980s. John DeWolf Hurt was our minister. And one day, Bill shared with John that he was leaving a sizable gift to the UUA endowment in Boston. Well, John, being John, called me into his office one day and explained the possibilities ahead of us. We were in the middle of an annual pledge drive, and he wanted me to drive out to Penny Farms. It's close to Waddy, Stark area. And he wanted me to personally pledge Bill Bennett and to get to know him. Bill was already frail by the time I had moved back to Jacksonville. He rarely was able to come to church, so I had not met him personally. At that time, we also formed the first UUCJ Endowment Committee. That began quite an adventure. Bill had had a successful corporate career, and you could tell, even though he was on crutches, that he had been a successful athlete in his younger years. He was a strong man, even in his mid-90s. I was prepared to ask him questions, and I had my agenda to get to know him better. Well, Bill had a different agenda and had a lot more questions than I had, all about the church. He wanted to know what issue the church was focused on, what activism they were most fired up about right now. He had seen a lot of activism in various UU churches he had attended since the turn of the century. Remember, he was in his mid-90s. He knew about our own history. He knew about how Duncan Fletcher, the father of Unitarian Universalism in Jacksonville, how Fletcher had led the efforts to get James Weldon Johnson admitted as the first Black attorney to the Florida bar. Thank you, Duncan Fletcher. In the early 90s, Bill was aware that UUs were fighting around the nation for the women's right to vote. This was in his lifetime. Women couldn't vote. In the 1950s, and there were many other issues. In the 1950s, UUCJ was active in supporting the integration of the Duval County schools. UUCJ members worked to get one of our own members, Jean Miller, elected to the school board. She was quite a progressive voice in Jacksonville. Many, including my grandfather, worked hard on her campaign. In the late 70s, UUCJ was pushing for sex education to be included in the Duval County school curriculum. We went en masse to many school board meetings. And Donna Janeski headed sex education for our own children through the OWL program. The first UUCJ Women's Support Group was also formed. By the 1980s, the attention was on the women's movement and women's rights. We had classes on assertiveness training for women. One of our members, Lynn Lyle, was director of the Women's Center at FFCJ. This is when I met Bill, in the middle of the women's movement. He shared stories of his niece, who was the first female engineer in her company. He had many questions for me about working in the male-dominated investment world. He wanted to know how the other men treated me, how management treated me. He was curious. He was supportive. He could see and was excited about how the world was changing. Now remember, this was the 1980s, and Bill was in his mid-90s. At that time, I don't think I knew anyone with a home computer. But Bill saw the future. He funded setting up a computer lab at Penny Farms. He said some of the wives were just in their 50s and that a computer would be an important part of their future. What a visionary. I don't know if Bill Bennett envisioned the LGBTQ movement. I don't know if Bill Bennett envisioned eye care, the criminal justice reforms, or the current environmental crisis. But what I do know is he wanted a progressive voice to be a part of Jacksonville's future. That is why he was the first donor to the UUCJ endowment. Many followed. Mary Combs grew beautiful roses that frequently adorned our chapel. She not only left a gift to the endowment, but she funded a donor advised fund to remodel our dilapidated kitchen. That was over 30 years ago. I think it's time to do it again. And many others followed. Marion Ranson, my grandfather's best friend. Marvin and Helen Burke, Dee Powers, Bob Irwin, Fred and Santa Mann, Lynn Shad, Mary Carter, Alice Ricker, Gail Bristol, Scotty Thornton, Carlos Fraticelli, Barbara Robinson, Diane Bazell. Quite a lively discussion with her many times. Kendra Ricker, Tom Bowman, Ralph Saffey, Phyllis and Cal Fleming. We have much to thank them for. Now, how can you get involved? You can you can contact any of the foundation board members, even the church board members will send you in the right direction, or you can join the Bequest Club. I especially want to invite you to join the Bequest Club. The Bequest Club is a group of members who already have left a bequest to the church through their will, their trust, their beneficiary forms. We have an annual breakfast, well, pre-COVID, to review the goals and accomplishments of the foundation. So how do you join? You simply sign a declaration of intent. You do not share how much you're leaving the church. It could be $100. It could be $100,000. The declaration just expresses that you are remembering UUCJ in your end-of-life planning, and you care about UUCJ's future. I was fortunate several years ago to attend the Sunday night services on a regular basis. The youth of our church were the religious associates. They provided the music. They were the ushers. It was their service. I was so impressed. I want you to know that we are in good hands in the future. I don't know what issues these young people would be facing 20, 30, 50 years from now, more extreme environmental crises, how to define life. Science has developed techniques that can artificially keep a body breathing, keep a heart pumping blood. I personally see that as an issue in the future. Maybe it will be the ethics of inhabiting another planet. I can't imagine what all the issues they will face in their lifetime. But what I do know is I believe in and trust these young members. My gift to the endowment will support their efforts for decades after I am gone. Before I end with one of my favorite quotes, I want to share a little about my grandfather. And you can see why, you'll see why the final quote touches me so. Mark McCall was a son of a primitive Baptist, a foot-washing Baptist minister. He was a good student. He could quote the Bible verse by verse, which, by the way, was great fun to watch him do that in a debate when someone would say, oh, the Bible says, and he would say, well, what about Matthew? And he'd give the chapter and verse and repeat something in the Bible that was totally contradictory. Many enjoyable conversations. And he also knew when to stop and when to back off. But he never joined the Baptist church. He knew there was more for him, and he immediately felt he had found his home with UUCJ. He was very excited when the current church was being built. I lived in another city, but he would give me updates week by week. He planted the original grounds. He and my Baptist grandmother came over every afternoon to water and tend to the young plants and trees around our building. My brother was spending the summer with him. So he came over every day to help also. My grandfather already had heart problems at that time. 2 months before he died, he talked to my Baptist grandmother and asked her to continue his financial commitment to fund the new church. There wasn't an endowment at that time, but his family honored it. When I look over the grounds at UUCJ, I feel at peace under the limbs of the trees he planted for us, all of us. I want to end with a quote from the Indian philosopher Tagore. The one who plants trees, knowing that he or she will never sit in their shade, has at least started to understand the meaning of life. To me, this is what the endowment does. It plants seeds, it plants trees to provide shade and support for the future generations at UUCJ. Thank you for letting me share